Welcome, welcome to the Jewish world. We are here with another episode with Jenny Brown, the author of The Whisper Sister, astonishing novel. You can see it right there on the screen. The Whisper Sister. I'm Rabbi Poupko. It's great to see you. How are you? How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing very well, thank you. And yourself?
Good. So you wrote this amazing novel about a young Jewish girl that comes to the Lower East Side. I'm not going to give away too much because people should read the book. But I'll say two things. Number one, as someone who worked in one of the oldest synagogues, if not the oldest, on the Lower East Side, the Bialystoker Shul, the book definitely resonated with me. The you don't need to have everyone there on the Lower East Side to just feel their stories in the air between the tenements, the synagogues. It's just it's as if they're still there. And the other thing I'll still say is that the hero, the protagonist of the story, is to me someone who sounds very much like Golda Meir. There's a lot of similarity to her childhood. So if you can just share with the audience a bit about who the hero is, how you came up with her, and just how that connects to your own life.
All right. So the hero of the novel is Minnie, and Minnie comes to America when she's about 10. There's a big sort of kerfuffle at school because her name is Malka when she comes over, and she doesn't know her birthday. Her teacher is actually the one who gives her the name Minnie. Um, and so the beginning is sort of her adjustment to the new world, but her father had come over 7 years earlier. So if you think about when you're 10, remembering back to when you're 3 is who can remember? So her father was pretty much a stranger. He wanted to send for them, but World War One intervened and there was no getting out.
Mhm.
Um, but he started working for the underworld for Arnold Rothstein, who is a real or was a real Jewish gangster. Um,
So I'll just interject if I
yes.
may. I actually also worked on the Upper West Side in the Jewish Center, and there's a huge plaque there in memory of Arnold Rothstein because his son was a member of the synagogue. So it's just interesting how all these synagogues, the Bialystoker Shul has a plaque honoring Bugsy Siegel, dedicated by his siblings. So
Mhm.
there's all this history in the synagogues.
That's funny because, they weren't, I mean, on one hand, they were, philanthropists, they gave a lot of money to Jewish causes, but on the other hand, there was some very shady stuff going on.
Not even did terrible things. Yeah.
Yeah, it was, you'll help me with pronunciation, the undershtick,
Understick.
the,
I didn't know that. But
the Jewish mafia, they
so
call
sorry for interjecting here. It's just so
it. No.
exciting. It's interesting. There was a rabbi in the Bialystoker Shul. I couldn't find any source for this online. It's just sort of the oral tradition in the shul.
Mhm.
His name was Rabbi Eskolsky, or Eshkolsky. Anyhow, he was the rabbi there, and he died suddenly. And the version that I heard is that the members, the congregants, who were members of the underworld, asked him to order a whole lot of wine for the synagogue, which was permitted, and then they can use it during probation. The rabbi declined their offer and was found hanging from a light pole in the Bronx in the middle of the night in a frozen winter, and that was the end of him. So this
I did
definitely
not
is the
hear
real
that.
thing.
I that did not come across that in my research, but there's actually part of my book is my main character wanting to go through her rabbi. First she wants one of her workers who's Catholic to ask his priest, but he was like, forget that. But that's part of it. So yeah, so her father opens a soda shop, but it's really the front for an illegal bar. And as they say, tragedy happens, and I don't want to say what the tragedy is because it gives away too much of the book. Um, but Minnie ends up taking over her father's bar. So it's a blind pig, or it's just a gritty bar, and she turns it into a really nice speakeasy. Um, so,
Speakeasy, for those not familiar, what is that?
so a speakeasy is a illegal bar. It's usually hidden off, and they're nicer. So you have like these gin joints where there's like sawdust on the floor, and it's just sort of a makeshift where men just come, and it was men, just come to, drink a lot. And a speakeasy is more of a place you might take a date. There's often music, it's pretty, you have nice cocktails. So she turns this, kind of nasty bar into a nice speakeasy. But that means she's got issues with her family. She's got issues with gangsters, because gangsters are the ones who provide the liquor and, help them set up. The police. I mean, there's all sorts of trouble she gets into.
Wow. And besides for the fact that she's born in Ukraine, which gives me the Golda Meir vibe, how else is her Jewish identity? How's that playing out in her being a young girl in the Lower East Side? Not only when she arrives and the circumstances that bring her there, but throughout her journey.
So, first of all, I will say I made up the town in Ukraine because I've noticed that especially Jewish genealogists know so many details about their hometown. I didn't dare pick a real one. But I have family from Wrocław, so I could Bratiana. I figured that was sort of an homage to my own past. But, in the old world, she was observant, in the way that, like, that's all there was. Because she was female, she didn't go to shul very often. Her brother was sent, to study the Hedder. And when she gets to America, her father has sort of repudiated Judaism, right? He believes in the dollar. He believes in, getting forward. Whereas her mom is still very, very involved in the community, keeps all the traditions. And Minnie ends up kind of feeling stuck in the middle, right? Because her father's saying they're like, don't go to, don't go to synagogue, don't believe the rabbi, he just wants your money. And her mother's saying, like, no, this is important. This is, not just religiously, but for your community. And so she feels sort of caught in the middle because, the people she knows through her mother are traditional. They get married young, they cover their hair once they're married. They stay at home with children. And here she is, this young woman going off to a bar to work. So she feels really caught. I mean, she has a good relationship with the rabbi of her mother's or her family's shul, really. And it's a big question for her. Like, I see these people and they're, making sure that all the holidays are observed, to the letter. And I see these people, the gangsters who will go out for, steak and mashed potatoes with butter in it. And so there's a big thread in there about uh, where she stands in the Jewish community.
Wow, when you mention Minnie's female identity or feminist identity and her Jewish identity, I can't help to think about the triangle fire on the Lower East
Mhm.
Side and the horror that so many young Jewish women, first of all, they didn't really have a choice. They came and they worked in sweatshops in the most horrid conditions.
Mhm.
And many of them were just absolutely abused, horrific working conditions, and they didn't really have a choice, right? They didn't have that choice of working. So can you
Mhm.
tell us a bit about what it was like not only to be Jewish with all the new dilemmas of the new world, but also to be a young Jewish woman where you have new independence, you're not completely under your parents' control, but you're also thrown to the sharks.
So, when she's younger over the summers before her father opens the speakeasy and starts to make some money, she goes to work at a factory, cutting cloth all day. And, she's miserable doing that. And then when she gets a job to help support her family when she's, 18-ish, she goes to work as a secretary. But for women, that was just miserable, I should say, for many women. Her boss, could harass her or grab her and when she goes back to the agency where that the employment agency, they say to her, well, wear longer skirts, right? Like, don't, like,
Wow.
it's the woman's fault, which is one of the reasons she loves the bar, because at the bar she can be in charge. She can be
She's her own boss.
right. but that was very, I mean, the research I did, it was very common that, there was no such thing as, harassment. It was just part of the job.
Wow, you mentioned this. I think of someone from the exact generation, a Nobel winner. I think her name is Rosalind Yallow. She was I hope I'm not getting the wrong person. She's the only Orthodox woman to get a Nobel Prize. And you'd be shocked because there's so many things that we encounter on a day-to-day basis that are because of her scientific discoveries. The concept of blood tests, testing
Yeah.
vitamin content in your blood, a lot of these things were her developments. And she was told, first of all, being a secretary would be for her like the pinnacle of achievement. And she was told to like just be very happy with that. So she went to Columbia. She was the secretary for a professor, which for in academia, it was like, really, what else are you going to ask for?
Mhm.
But like you're saying, it came with pretty horrible stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you could be a teacher, you could be in retail, you could be a secretary, but you really, couldn't have that many ambitions. It was a tough time to be a woman who needed to have a job.
Hmm. Wow. And this whole story, how did it really come to life? How did your own personal upbringing, life as a Jewish woman, how did it bring about this story?
I think that I've always sort of grappled about where I fit in the Jewish community. Both my
We
parents were,
all do.
what? Me
We
too.
all do. All Jews really struggle with
Well,
that.
there you
That's
go.
why there's a breakaway synagogue in every community.
So we didn't belong to a synagogue. I lived in South Florida. I grew up in
Um,
Miami and Miami Beach. And so a lot of my friends were having their bar and bat mitzvahs. And my parents didn't want to join a synagogue. And my grandparents also lived down there. Um, so like all of my religion came from them, right? They sent me to the Alexander Mess High School in Israel.
wow.
They helped me after graduate school. I was on a kibbutz for about 6.5 months.
Wow.
They helped me through that. Um, but at home, my parents just, I mean, we celebrated Hanukkah, there was always a Seder, but not necessarily keeping Passover. And I always sort of felt like I didn't know where I fit in. And as I got older, I started studying myself. I don't want to give away my age, but I'll say 16 years ago, I had an adult bat mitzvah
Wow.
with another class of adults. So my Hebrew is terrible. Like I can read if I'm really like going slowly and I have all
Mhm.
the vowels. Um, I can, I mean, there's some of the prayers I know. And for me, a turning point was when I was after the kibbutz, I was traveling and I was in Bulgaria. Let's get that light back on. I was in Bulgaria and I was feeling really lonely. So I went to a synagogue and I opened the prayer book. And of course, I think I was very naive. I was like, oh, it's Hebrew and Cyrillic, right? I couldn't read
Sorel,
anything.
is that the language in Bulgaria? Excuse my
It's
ignorance.
Bulgarian, but the writing is Cyrillic.
Mhm.
So I was like, hmm. And at the end of the service, actually, some kids, I was like in my 20s, some other 20-year-olds came up to me and said, oh, you're American. And they said, how could you tell? I said, we could tell. So when I got married, to a Jewish man, which was not, my grad school Hillel rabbi, performed the ceremony. I was very, very involved in Hillel. And I said that when we had kids, I didn't want them to have that experience of being in a synagogue and not knowing what's going on. So we sort of compromised with a conservative synagogue. And I learned a lot. My kids learned a lot. I felt embraced by the community. And that was really wonderful. And I love the fact that my kids, who are now both college age, can, actually, this is kind of funny because we are in a certain sense secular because, we don't keep kosher stuff like that. But my son emailed me texted me after Rosh Hashanah, his first year in college, and said, Mom, you have to send me my Sidor and my Talit. And I was like, okay. I said, why? He goes, I don't know that the Talit here have been washed. And they use a reform Sidor. And I need mine. I need my own to
Uh,
go through. So
mhm.
to me, that was that that was like a really great moment for me. And it's something that I felt like I didn't have. Like,
Mhm.
I'm clearly Jewish. I'm very involved in the Jewish community, but I never felt, you know, like I knew what I was doing. I like to say that my on my father's side, I come from a long line of those Jewish socialists who are mostly atheists, but will do anything for the Jewish community, right? You
Wow.
need help, we're going to help you.
Wow. And do you feel like there have been other people who saw the book and were like, "Oh, I see myself in that." Have you seen any of that?
I have so my first book was also very Jewish, Modern Girls, took place in the Jewish community on the Lower East Side, but in the 1930s. And I had a lot of
Mhm.
people say to me that things resonate. I mean, this book's only been out for a week, so
Mhm.
not everyone's, I haven't gotten a lot of feedback from people yet.
Mhm.
Um, but it's I do think people see themselves. And it's interesting too, because like with the first book, even though it was the Jewish community, I would go to book clubs and people would say, wow, if these characters were Irish, it would be my family. Or if these characters were Greek, it would be my family, because so much of the immigrant experience is universal.
Wow. And we've seen a lot of awareness, unfortunately. Well, the awareness is good, but the need for the awareness is not,
Mhm.
around the rise of anti-Semitism in the past year. I know you've been working on something that's related to the wave of anti-Semitism since October 7th. How does that play out in the life of Minnie in the fiction? And how does that play out in the way you think things have changed now? Maybe the book will resonate in ways that you didn't plan for when you wrote it.
Well, I mean, definitely part of the book, her mother, Minnie's mother, refuses to learn English because she says, my butcher speaks Yiddish, my rabbi speaks Yiddish, all my friends speak Yiddish. What do I need English for? So it's definitely sort of a little bit of a cloistered world. And once you sort of get out of that, you start to see um, where people are judgmental of you or making assumptions about you. And there is a scene where Minnie and her brother are attacked by an Italian gang, because it was very much divided, right? There were the Jewish streets, the Italian streets,
Yeah.
and slurs came out, and a lot of the stereotypes like give us money, you have all the money anyway. Um,
Wow.
but a lot of that is and that's also in my theme in my first book too. And one of the things is my grandfather, who was born in, I'm going to say 1911. He told me so many stories. He said there was one job he had where somebody left the office every night and thought he was being affectionate, saying, "Good night, you Jewish," the
Yikes.
mamzer, but that not mamzer, but and finally he got up the courage to say to him, like, that's not, that's not cool. And I just, you hear a lot of stories. And I remember very clearly when East and West Germany were reunited and how upset my grandparents were. Um, and
Really?
oh yeah, but they were very upset because everyone had family. Everyone had family back, in Europe, in the 1930s and 40s. And so they were like, this is
You mean
dangerous.
a united Germany would do the same horrors again?
That's, yeah, because they thought that they
Wow.
would strengthen. And one of the things my grandmother used to always say to me, like, she said she didn't really care who I dated. I could marry who I wanted. She said, but it's better if you marry a Jewish man. And I said, why? She said, there's so many reasons for a husband to leave his wife. Don't let the fact that you're Jewish be one of them. And
Wow.
you know their family experienced the things that were going on during
Wow.
the Shoah. So yeah, so are things better now? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, my kids' college campus has Jewish Voices for Peace, which is very pro-Palestinian and anti-Zionism. And there were protests through the
Hmm.
time, and I think in some ways it made my kids stronger. But
Hmm.
you know, my daughter called me a couple times saying, like, they're all out here. I have to get across campus. You know, if you say, you're not interested, they say, oh, so you're for genocide? So it was a very difficult place to be. So I feel like we had a little few golden years there, but I feel like things are sort of flipping back.
Wow. And in terms of the world of literature, I don't know if you saw, there was a book event with, I forgot the rabbi's name in Brooklyn, but I'm gonna remember it. It's been all over the news. And basically there was this book launch, and the rabbi moderating it was a Zionist rabbi. And without permission, now that the company claims, the one of the employees said this event is canceled because the moderator is a Zionist. How do you see the world of literature going forward? Some anti-Zionist organizations have made literal directories, which are very 1930s Germany vibes, of what books are Zionist, what bookshops are Zionist. Uh, how do you see, do you see the world of Jewish literature becoming stronger, more distinct because of anti-Semitism, having a broader appeal? Where do you see this all going in terms of appealing to a broad audience?
So I see the Jewish community coming together. I'm in a Facebook group of female identifying Jewish writers, and
Mhm.
we can sort of vent there and really be vulnerable and open. You know, the list of Jewish authors I saw, and I had friends who were on this list that, you know, they're Zionists because of this, or and you know, I'm not judging people for being Zionist or anti-Zionist, but they took little things like so and so hasn't, you know, put on Instagram about the genocide, therefore they must be a Zionist. Um,
Wow.
so it's, you know, there have been rumors that like Jewish authors have not been able to get certain books published.
I think that was an article in someone definitely wrote an article about that, maybe even in the Wall Street Journal, how there's this expulsion and ethnic cleansing of Jews from literary spaces. Yeah.
Which is kind of funny because Jewish audiences are really readers. With my first book, I went
Yeah.
with the Jewish Book Council, and I went, you know, all around the country to different synagogues. And I mean, Jewish people are voracious readers, and I don't mean to group everyone together because obviously not everyone is. But I do feel like it's kind of part of our culture. I think it's
Yeah.
because, you know, the study of Torah and Talmud, like
Hmm.
we read.
Yeah, but huge emphasis on literacy.
Yes.
Wow. And so do you see this uh, creating more interest among Jews in Jewish literature in a book like yours, or not?
Well, I'm hoping it has a broader audience, right? Because yes, it is in the Jewish community, and you know, Judaism is a big thread. But like I said with the other one, the immigrant experience, many aspects of it are universal. And
Mhm,
this is about prohibition and the speakeasies and cocktails and going
mhm,
out, you know, to fun places, that I hope will appeal to a broader audience.
mhm,
Um, because so many people are like, oh, Prohibition, that's fascinating. I really want to read it.
mhm. Wow. Now there's the story of your book, The Whisper Sister,
Mhm.
the novel, just where it all went. But then there's sort of like a message. Is there a message that you want to impart with it, or is it just sort of this kind of entertainment, uh, just general enjoyable literature?
It's definitely about finding your people. You know, that it doesn't really matter if you feel really Jewish or not Jewish enough, or feel really American or not American enough,
Hmm.
that we're all like you said before, like all Jews are sort of questioning their place, but like we none of us really know where we are. I mean, I guess unless you came over on the Mayflower, you know, we're all immigrants. Actually, they're immigrants too, but unless you were indigenous to the United States, right? We're
Hmm.
all immigrants at some point. And, you know, it's okay if you don't fit in, you can still
Hmm.
have your people and still feel at home, right?
Hmm.
I think that's sort of the message.
Got it. Okay, one final question is the stereotypes around alcohol.
Mhm.
On the one hand, there's this Jews are not drinkers.
Mhm.
There's this very strong ethos of Jews are not drinkers. They have lower rates of alcoholism, etc. On the other hand, during probation, there are lots of Jews, in the industry.
Mhm.
And you also have l'chaims, right? People to this day, we have Kiddush, we have Passover. So where does the book leave off the audience in terms of Jewish culture and alcohol?
Well, I kind of want to say that, there's not one point of view, right? Minnie likes her bourbon straight, right? That's her father taught her. You can't adulterate it, but you know, her friends drink only, the Passover wine or the Shabbat wine and just to sip at that, right? There is no one, just like there's no one image of a Jewish person, right? You've got Sephardic folks from Morocco and Ethiopian Jews, and you got the refuseniks. I mean, just like that, it's in the Jewish world too. I mean, she has most of her interactions with Meyer Lansky, who was a real
Gangster.
Jewish gangster who ended up on Miami Beach. Um, and yeah, so some of the characters drank a lot, and some didn't at all, and some just sort of dabbled.
Wow. All right. Jennifer Brown, author of The Whisper Sister. What an amazing, amazing, amazing put together of the immigrant experience, Jews coming to the Lower East Side, the phenomenon of the Jewish gangs and underworld in the 1920s and 30s, and just so what it all means today in the wake of anti-Semitism. Wow. I strongly recommend the book, and it's just amazing that you're able to put these things all and weave them so beautifully together.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to speak with you. This is lovely.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. And everyone should go and get out that book.